Hi, I'm Chad with Move Forward Guitar. This lesson is from our course, Beginner Course 1. This course will take you from an absolute beginner to a budding guitarist with a solid foundation. By the end of this course, you'll have all the tools you need to start learning songs. Along with the video lessons, this course includes a premium e-guide which contains detailed charts and diagrams for each lesson, as well as extra bonus tips and tricks. It's a great companion to the video lessons and will really accelerate your learning. To learn how to get your copy of this e-guide, as well as get in-depth guidance to help you practice the material in each lesson and much more, click the link on the screen. Welcome to Lesson 7. In this lesson, I'm going to teach you your first chord, the open E minor chord. So first off, I'll explain what a chord is. And a chord is just two or more, usually three or more notes that are played simultaneously. And on the guitar, that means you're fretting two or more notes, or it's just a combination of open strings and fretting one note or whatever. You could be fretting multiple strings, or you could only be fretting one string and then have open strings ringing out. There's just lots of combinations. In this chord, I'm going to be fretting two notes, two strings in one fret, which I'll explain in just a sec, and then the rest of the strings are going to be open. And if you listen to music, you know what chords are. Music's made up of chords. All popular songs have chords. So I'm sure you already know what a chord is and can identify it, but I just want to make sure that you know technically it's two or more, but usually three or more notes that are played simultaneously. And in this lesson, I'm going to show the open E minor chord, and I'm showing this chord first because it's one of the most common chords for beginners, and it's not just a beginner chord. Everyone uses this chord, so once you learn it, you're going to use it probably for as long as you play guitar, so it's definitely worth taking the time and really getting down. But also, like I just mentioned, you're only fretting two strings and you can strum through all the strings, so it's a fairly easy chord to play. But don't think that's going to be super easy for you if you've never played chords before. That's one of the harder things when you're just starting a guitar, is learning how to play chords, because it takes a lot of strength in your hands. Your hands feel awkward at first. The tips of your fingers hurt a lot, so it's going to take a lot of practice if you're not used to it, but over time they'll just become really simple to you. So first off, I'll just play the chord so you can hear what it sounds like. And again, this is an open E minor chord. And the way I'm getting this is by fretting two strings, like I said, and I'm fretting the fifth string, which is this string right here, in the second fret, and the fourth string in the second fret, and then all the other strings are open, so I hit all the other strings and just let those ring out. And I could fret it with my second and third finger, or my first and second finger. Both ways are common. I recommend learning both ways, and in an upcoming lesson, it's going to be important to really be able to use your second and third finger for when we're transitioning to another chord. But there'll be times when you're playing songs that your first and second make more sense, and it just depends on the chords before and after what's going to be the best for the transitions. So first off, we need to talk about fretting notes, since we haven't talked about that yet. And fretting a note is just pushing a string down in a fret. So for example, if I let the fifth string ring open and just hit that string, that's an open A note, which you should know since that's the name of the string. If I was to push down in the second fret that same string, the fifth string, now I'm playing a B note, because in this fret on this string is a B note when I push it down. So it's just like pushing down a key on a piano. It's the same concept. It's just when you push a key on the piano, that's all you have to do. But on a guitar, you need to push the string down and then pluck it or strum it with your other hand. And the trick about fretting a note is that you want to fret it close to the front fret wire. So just like when we were putting a capo on, you don't want it back near the back fret wire unless you don't have any choice, which I'll talk about in a second. But between these two fret wires is the second fret, so this whole space right here is the second fret. I want to get as close as I can to this front fret wire without being on top of it. And the reason you do that is because it takes less pressure to get that note to ring out. If I'm back here in the fret, I'll just stick on the fifth string again. You can hear that buzzing. If I use that same amount of pressure and get close to the front fret wire, that buzzing's gone. So if I was back here, it would take more pressure to get that buzzing not to be there. And then another thing that happens when you put more pressure is you can get your string out of tune a little bit. But the thing about it is when you're playing chords, not every finger is going to be able to be close to that front fret wire. So for example, this E minor chord, my second finger or my third finger, which is on the 4th string, is close to the front fret wire, but my second finger is back and not as close because my third finger's in the way. I wouldn't stack them on top of each other in some weird way. They're going to be side by side like mine is right now. So with different chords, when you're fretting some notes, they're going to have to be farther back in the fret than other notes, but still it's not going to be all the way back to where I'm almost touching this back fret wire. You can see that it still has some space between my finger and this back fret wire. So that's the first thing about fretting notes. The next thing is that you want to be on the tips of your fingers. That won't be true for every single thing you do on the guitar, but for this first chord you want to be on the tips of your fingers. You can see where the creases are in my fingertips. They're not on this flatter part, they're near the tips. So really be on the tips of your fingers, have a nice arch here in your knuckles, so you don't want them bent back like that. If your knuckles are bending back like that, you need to adjust them and get them to have a nice arch. The other thing is that you want to use the minimum amount of pressure necessary to get the note to ring out clearly. So if you hear anything like that, that means there's not enough pressure. But if your fingernails turn really white and you feel a lot of pressure in there, you're putting too much pressure and you're going to end up hurting your hand. So just a minimum amount of pressure to get the note to ring out clearly. And when you're starting out, your fingertips are really going to hurt until you build calluses. So over time you'll build calluses on the tips of your fingers and they won't hurt anymore. It won't matter how long you play, they still won't hurt. But at first, playing anything on the guitar really makes your fingertips sore. So you're just going to have to get used to that. It's okay to play through that pain a little bit. Don't make it so that it's like extremely painful and you can't pick up the guitar anymore, but they're going to be sore when you're starting out. The place you don't want to feel pain is inside your hand. So if you feel any sharp pains inside your hand, you need to give it a break and make sure that that pain goes completely away before you pick up the guitar again, because those types of pain can actually cause long-term damage. There can be a little burning sensation, just like when you're lifting weights or something, your muscles burn, and a little bit of soreness, like a dull type of soreness. Just like with lifting weights, you can get that type of pain, but nothing sharp, nothing that feels like anything's wrong with your hand. Anything like that, you need to stop, let your hand completely heal, and then do it again. And make sure that when you're holding anything on the guitar that you're not straining. You just use the minimum amount of pressure, lightly grab the guitar neck. Everything needs to be really loose and feel comfortable. Anything that is straining is going to cause problems for you, not only now, but down the road. Now the other thing about holding this chord, and all chords you hold are going to be a little different, so I'll go over them individually, but with this chord typically your thumb is going to be up above the neck like mine is. Depending on your hands, everyone's hands are different, yours might not be up that high, but usually with this chord you're not going to have your thumb down on the neck. There's other chords that you will play this way, but starting out especially, that's going to be really tough to get enough pressure holding it that way. So typically with a lot of open chords your thumb is up, and it's okay for the neck to rest in this part of your hand right here. And your hand can touch the neck near your first finger right here. Just make sure that you're not blocking out that first string. So all the strings need to ring out. And then make sure there's some space between the rest of your hand and the neck. And like I said, everyone's hands are different, so it might look a little different than mine looks. If you have really small hands, you're just going to have to adjust and get it to work however it works. If you have really big hands, your thumb may be up even higher. It's really hard to say without seeing your hand specifically, but just make sure that what I went over, those are pretty common rules, so make sure that you're following those. Also, you want to make sure that your wrist doesn't look like this, to where it's up and your hand's up against the neck. You want a nice little bend here in your wrist. It shouldn't be totally straight usually. Maybe your hand has to do that. Everyone's hands are a little different, like I said, so you might have to, but you want to try and get a little bit of bend here in your wrist and just make sure that it's nice and loose. And playing chords are going to be really difficult at first, so you're just going to have to keep adjusting, try it. You're not going to get this in one day usually. Maybe you can get something to ring out in the first day, but a lot of people can't. So you just have to do it, adjust, make sure you're on the tips of your fingers, and like I said, and not blocking out any of the other strings. That's going to be another thing that's really hard when you're starting off, is making sure that these fingers that are fretting the notes aren't blocking any of the other strings. So you're just going to have to keep readjusting and keep trying until you can get all the notes to ring out clearly. And if you're really struggling with it, don't worry, just do it a little bit each day. Eventually your hand will adjust and will figure out how to hold it properly so that you can get all the strings to ring out. So like I said, you can hold it with your second and third finger like I am in the second fret, so that your second finger would be on the 5th string, 2nd fret, your third finger would be on the 4th string, 2nd fret, or you can use your first and second fingers, so your first finger would be on the 5th string, 2nd fret, and your second finger would be on the 4th string, 2nd fret. Either way, you're going to have to learn both, so it's good to practice both ways. But like I said, in an upcoming lesson, holding it with your second and third fingers will be really important for when we're transitioning chords. So once you think you have the chord held properly, just strum through the strings. And if you hear anything that sounds like that, that means you're blocking strings out. You need to readjust, and then what you can do is just let your pick fall through each string. Back here on the sound hole, I was just doing it up on the neck to show you, and find out what strings aren't ringing out clearly. So if I was going through and it sounded like this, well, that would mean the third string's being blocked out by something. I'd need to figure out what it was and readjust my fingers until I could get that string to ring out clearly. Or if you hear any buzzing like that, that means you're either too close to the back fret wire, or you could be on top of the front fret wire. You don't want to be on top of the front fret wire. Or you're just not putting enough pressure. So if you're hearing that, make sure you're not too far back in the fret and make sure that you're using enough pressure. But like I said, always use the minimum amount of pressure needed. And make sure when you're playing this to take lots of breaks, especially when you're starting out. Like I said, no pain inside your hand is good. If it's a sharp type of pain, you need to take a rest, make sure that it really heals and that you don't feel any pain before you pick up your guitar again. Your fingertips are definitely going to hurt when you're starting out. That's okay. Over time you'll build calluses and they won't hurt anymore. And the other thing is, you can start with a capo. And you can put it on something like the 3rd or 4th fret like I showed you in the last lesson. And now, if you're on the 4th fret, whatever fret you're on, just make sure you skip a fret, and then that's the fret you fret those notes. So I'm on the 4th fret, that means I skip the 5th fret, and I fret those 2 notes in the 6th fret. And putting a capo on is going to make it a lot easier to push these notes down and get them to ring out clearly. So I recommend starting out like that if you're having any trouble, which you probably will. So once you have the chord down and you can strum through it and everything sounds good, there's no muting or buzzing, you're going to strum while holding the chord. So you're going to do 4 down strums. So it'd be like this. So the whole point is to have consistency through the strum. So you don't want to do 1 strum down and then have a long break and then do 3 really quick or anything like that. You want to try to get it so that there's even space in between all the strums. And do it really slowly to start. Just do it as slow as you need. Just get it so your hand is moving constantly, that it's not a strum and then a pause down here and then rush to get back up and strum again. Just nice, constant strums. And when you're strumming slowly, it's all right to use your arm a little bit. It's almost necessary, but still keep your wrist loose and use your wrist as you're strumming. So don't lock your wrist like we talked before when we were talking about strumming. It shouldn't look like this, and it'll sound like this if it looks like this. It's going to be really hard to not make it sound like you're strumming too hard, and it's just going to sound really choppy and bad. So again, just keep your wrist loose. Keep the minimum amount of pressure on the pick so that you're not giving it a death squeeze and letting all the white in your fingernails show or anything. Just do the minimum amount of pressure to keep it from falling out of your hands. If it does fall out though, just pick it up, do it again, because that's something you just have to get used to, is how much pressure it takes to hold the pick. And again, just do it slowly. We're not trying to do anything like that. And when you're strumming, try to strum with consistent strums as far as the volume. So you don't want to go anything like that. It should just be fairly consistent level of volume. And again, just go really slow. We're not trying to do this fast. We're not trying to get anything like that, just really slowly. You're just getting the feel down, and in upcoming lessons we'll do more, but this is really important for starting off. And then once you're able to do 4 strums and get the distance between the strums pretty consistent and have your hand constantly moving and a pretty consistent volume, then you can just loop that over and over. So you're really just doing 4 strums each time, but it's just going to feel like you're doing infinite strums just depending how far you go. But counting your head 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 with your strums so that you kind of keep your place. So if I was counting along, it'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. That'll be important down the road. You don't have to worry too much about that now, but it is important to know where those numbers land. But I'm not going to dive deep into that right now. So if you struggle counting and doing that, don't worry too much about it. The point is just to keep it consistent, and then you can just loop those 4 strums over and over. As many times as you need until you feel really comfortable doing that. Thanks for watching, and if you'd like detailed guidance to help you practice material in this lesson, as well as grab your copy of the Premium e-guide, which includes detailed charts and diagrams for each lesson, as well as extra bonus tips and tricks, you can click the link on the screen.